All right. We're
Hers
missing
dropped.
someone.
We lost a man.
Yeah, hers
Oh,
dropped. Yeah.
all right. That's fine. We will press on for now. But we got to get the titty respecter in here. So definitely make sure that happens. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Exit Liquidity, episode 78, I want to say. Maybe that's off. 78. This week, we are chatting with some Chads from Initia, Zani, and hopefully Hirsch soon. Zan, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having us. I think Hirsch will be back in a second. You said it's making him download the app. But, you guys just have the most unreal production quality of all time when it comes to podcasts, especially for something that's so crypto native. So really happy to be here and chatting with you guys.
Appreciate it, man. That means a lot. There's a lot of love that goes into this stuff. So it's good to know that people like it. Yeah, I guess we can kind of get into this. Before we, get too deep into the weeds on anything, would be interested to hear kind of, who we have on today. Who are you, Zani?
Sure, for sure. Yeah, so he's back.
Oh, there we go.
Need the fourth square.
There we go.
There we go. Welcome.
Epic. Okay, nice. Okay, yeah, a little bit about me. You want the whole spiel, the whole background?
Whatever you think is best. Whatever is gonna give us the best idea of who you are. Got to put you on the spot a little bit,
Yeah, I'll give you the whole showdown. Okay, I'm Zan. I'm a Canadian man, but I went to school in the U.S., studied computer science and business, did my master's. Was a software engineer in Web 2 for a while. Wanted to see what it was like building in crypto after spending a lot of time playing with DeFi Summer. I farmed yams and pickles, got rugged on almost every Olympus DAO fork, and then was interested in building in crypto. And I thought that the app chain thesis was always very interesting. I thought it was cool that people could vertically integrate what they're building into the chain itself, and then have this shared underlying thread of infrastructure for all things communication to make all these different sovereign blockchains talk with each other. Even though I spent a lot of my time interacting on Ethereum and EVM chains, I still found this to be an interesting area to explore. And so I joined the most relevant Cosmos chain at the time, which was Terra. And so, that was a ride and a half. I helped build a lot of the DeFi products as a smart contract dev. I was loaned out to the ecosystem a lot to help them with their products. Built some things like helped with Astroport and Ozone, a little bit of some ones that I probably shouldn't mention. And yeah, after that, that's where I kind of met Stanford. Stanford is the CEO of Initia. He was also there as a researcher doing MEV research within the Cosmos ecosystem, as well as some PM work. And him and I left together in early 2022 to build out our own project. It was an options project. We raised some money, but unfortunately, it was still supposed to launch on Terra. And so we still kind of got fucked either way, because we were supposed to launch the week after the collapse happened. But luckily, we had only taken in a little bit of the money, and most of it was on mainnet. We returned it all back to our investors. We said, you know what, just believe in us next time. We don't know what's going to happen with this ecosystem. And then it turned out to be 3AC, FTX, Genesis. Everything kind of exploded. And so after that, took some time, took a beat. I went back to Ethereum land, worked with some teams like the SudoSwap guys. Stanford went back to Jane Street, realized you can't do quant finance anymore. And then we basically teamed back up a few months later to work on Initia because we still had the itch to build something ourselves. And we had a full understanding of what multi-chain networks should look like, where they go wrong. And just after so much time within Cosmos, as well as like playing and actually using DeFi and Ethereum, we felt like we could build a system that is much better than what currently exists.
Good stuff. Yeah, I love hearing happy endings after being involved in Terra. Really strikes a chord. I think all things considered, looking pretty good. Hirsch, I don't know if you're all set up now, if you can hear us, but would love to hear a little bit about the man behind the dog as well.
Yeah, I can hear you guys perfectly fine. A little bit about myself. I'm just a 3-year-old Samoy that's been on Twitter for a good part of 4 years or so. First year I wasn't a Samoy, but the years after I became a Samoy. Got into crypto around 2020, around COVID. I feel like a lot of the new entrants came to crypto around that time, and it was just like because of the stimmies that we got from the Canadian government. I was like, yo, let me just buy some crypto. Uh, Bought a shit ton of stuff during DeFi summer 2020. Got rugged on a lot of them. Made some money. Rolled it over to like Solana in 2021, and made like some money, but then lost it all in the bear market in 2021. And just and I've been like stuck here since that. So that's pretty much about me. And I got introduced to Inisha through a friend of Zon's, Zahir Split Cap. Shout out to Zahir, and he put me in connects with the team, Stan and Zon, and they were like, "You want to do something for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm down." So that's pretty much it for me.
What's do you know the reasoning behind like so many, not just like devs in crypto, but like very based developers in crypto coming from Canada? Is there like something going on, like some kind of incubation that we don't know about?
It's the incubation it's done through strictly to being on Tim Hortons diet, being on a large double double every day. I'm pretty sure that contributes like a lot for the Canadian devs, like
I think
coming into the crypto space. Timbits and double doubles.
I'm personally a Long John fan, but I think aside from that diet, there's not a lot of private opportunities in Canada. I'd say like firstly, there is a pretty big following of crypto in Canada because people like Vitalik are Canadian. Like Ethereum was basically born in Canada. But outside of that, there is a huge public sector in Canada. And when people want to build their own startups, it's not really the best scene and the best country that promotes people building startups. And so I think crypto is an easy way for people to build their own shit, work on whatever they want, without having those government constraints and without having to, for example, move to the US and then start a company.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like every single like solid team is just straight Canadian. It's hilarious to see. The yeah, so we have the podcast called Exit Liquidity. Funny enough, it's named after that because of the events of Terra Luna. So we like to ask everyone who comes on, favorite moment or kind of most deep cut moment where you were exit liquidity. Hirsch, you wanna start?
Ooh, exit liquidity. There's a lot of instances of me being exit liquidity. Uh, Terra was one of them. FTX was probably the biggest one. I thought Sam could do no wrong, but I realized he could do everything wrong, and lost a lot of money during the FTX collapse, and uh, and lost a shit ton of money during like the DGen summer that we had in 2021, and NFTs as well. Oh man, NFTs haven't been a strong suit of mine. Uh, been exit
I
liquidity too. A lot of mints. I remember art blocks being one of them. I got the Fidenza the Fidenza hype, right, and the other art squiggles and whatnot. And so I'm like, yo, art blocks are probably like Lindy. So if you buy some art blocks, they'll probably go up. I bought a few, wasted a lot of ETH on them, and they never went up. And they've been in my wallet since. So
I respect that though. I'm still a huge. I mean, I don't own any, thankfully, but I'm a huge squiggle respecter. Love all of like the Fidenzas and the old
yeah.
shit. It just it's like DeFi. It's one of those things you love, but you just you don't want anywhere near your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Squiggles are still doing all right, aren't they?
I'm not sure actually. I know SquiggleDAO was doing a lot of stuff to like help support. It's like they were backing a bunch of loans and providing liquidity for 3.5 ETH. It's like
Okay.
I
Not
guess it's
great.
like outperforming the rest of the down market, but like still down.
Yeah, only penguins turned out to be the safe asset in NFT land. Um,
For now.
personally, yeah, for now we'll see. I believe in Luca. I'd say the biggest one was definitely Terra. All of my assets were basically in locked Luna, and then I was paid in UST for a very long time, and I just had that held. So basically, just nuked my net worth 90%, and then the company that I just spent building for like 6 to 8 months, putting all my time into, just instant zero as well. So that was probably the biggest case of exit liquidity. I'd say one of the ones that but I blocked that out now, right? So I don't really think about that. But one
Doesn't
of the
count
ones
anymore.
that I would say was, yeah, the deepest cut was actually Parallel TCG. You know that game? I did the first card pack opening, and I got some sick cards. They were worth like 30 ETH, and this was when ETH was at like 4,600 or like 4,000 plus, and I held all of those straight to zero. Yeah, and that was
Bro,
brutal.
just
That's a
like
tough
me.
one.
Bro,
Yeah,
just like
can't do
me.
the NFTs. I can't
Parallel. I
parallel.
I remember the first pack drop being hype. I pulled the 333 on the first pack drop. Even the second one, I pulled the 333. But after that, my cards just went to shit. I had like a really like I had a few good cards that were worth a couple of ETH, but I never sold them, and that's probably my biggest like regret. I had a card worth like a lot of ETH and I didn't sell them.
Yeah, I think like the funny thing about the UST collapse, like were you guys by the last DPEG, like the final nail in the coffin, not that like first one. Were you? I always look back at chats between me and Ali, and I was like in there typing to him like, I swear it's gonna repeg. Like I'm not even worried about it. It's like gonna definitely depeg or repeg. Like what was that moment like for you guys? If you want to relive
Um,
it.
yeah, yeah. I'd say it was. I thought it was also going to repeg personally, and so I held all my assets still. I think the smart move that I saw from like a DGen Spartan tweet was like, yeah, if you're going to take a 1% loss on something that potentially might go to zero, just take the 1% loss. And that's what I should have done. Should have just nuked out of it early. But I had faith. And I think that really came back at me. I think at that time, yeah, I was in San Francisco. I had actually just come home from a trip to Korea. And I was just up all night, just refreshing curve pools. I had like 6 curve pool tabs open, and I just go between them, refreshing all of them. Yeah, it was a brutal time for sure.
Yeah, faith is a killer in this space. Good lesson, but you know, always good to look back, think about
It's taught
what could have
me
been.
a lot about, one, realizing things can be too good to be true, and two, taking profits. I think I've forever last cycle just held a lot of stuff, and I think the motto should just be ABS, always be selling. If a lot of people that you see on Twitter will have like these crazy P&Ls, but it's going to be incredibly hard to do that. You are just looking for like steady gains. And so if you've made a couple X, take it. That's great profit, right? You don't need the 100X that you see someone post on Twitter.
Yeah, tough lesson in this space that you kind of just have to learn firsthand. Lots of people
I'll
seeing
never
all this
learn
shit
that
on
lesson.
Twitter. I mean, if you don't,
Take me
it'll
back
be
to
like
2 weeks
beaten
ago. I
into
want to
you.
sell the top again.
That's it's part of the cost of doing business here, I guess. And here we are. You know, was it 2
Yeah,
years later
now
after Luna?
you think we're going to have a Terra 3 now? since they just lost some lawsuit and now TFL is shutting down again.
I honestly want another one. Like, it was fun. I'm not gonna lie. I remember like doing moon math in my head. It's like, if I just get like 25K and put it into Anchor, like that could cover my living expenses for the rest of my life. You know, there's like there's nothing quite like that.
Yeah, I'll never forget running the numbers on like Wonderland Time, 89,000% APY, and like spanning it out over a year. I'm like, dude, I don't need to work. Like, I'll be fine.
Do you remember Snow Dog?
Yeah.
That one was epic.
I don't know that
where
one.
there's like, it was basically like Wonderland or Ohm, but they were accumulating like a massive RFE backing. And they were like, we're going to use the treasury and we're going to use it all in one clip to buy back at this one exact time.
Yeah.
But there's only like one dude who had the MEV bot running that got to take advantage of that. And everyone else just lost money.
What do you guys think are like all this stuff we're talking about like years after the fact of just like tough lessons learned or just like shit you look back on and you're like what the fuck were we thinking? Or like what, like, did that really happen? What do you guys think are some examples of like stuff like that that's happening right now that we'll look back on in a couple of years and be like, dude, what?
I think everything's pretty normal right now. I mean,
I think
that's
pretty normal.
That cannot be true.
It doesn't feel normal because everything, I feel like last cycle, there was so much new stuff that started at the ground level that I was interested in playing with. Like, you know, the ohms and maybe it was even just ohm forks, but there's a lot of random stuff to play with. Now I feel like this cycle lately, it's just been these massive launches of projects that started last cycle or in the bear. And then you get a fat airdrop, you sell it, and then that's it. And now you're just waiting for the next thing to happen and you park your assets in Athena in the meantime, or you farm on Pendle some points. But that like mayhem of last cycle where I actually owned so many tokens, like I'm not feeling that this cycle. And I think right now the airdrop meta, I think has got to be played out. And like everyone a few weeks ago was talking about this high FDV, low float situation, but it still continues. I think it's just everyone right now is probably thinking if I launch at 4 billion, I go down to 2 billion. If I launch at 2 billion, I go down to 1 billion. And so it's in a lot of teams' interest to still launch at a high FDV, maybe bleed out 50%, and then their treasury is still worth so much more. So I think we need that narrative to change. And we're going to have to see some like crazier experimental launches until we figure out what works. What I was surprised by was Friendtech was full 100%. Everyone owns it. The community owns it. But that token is doing horrendously. I totally bought the top and I thought it was going to be worth a lot more.
Zon was the exit liquidity. I sold on Zon. Thank you.
You had
I
Cito
think
backing you up there too.
yeah, I mean, I sold for some profits, but I definitely thought it was going to go way higher. It was like a painful selling. But yeah, I think, well, I mean, that takes us to like, I don't want to start with this question, but I mean, you're on like the protocol side now. Initia, well, let's start with where were you? What were you doing? Where you kind of decided, yeah, I'm gonna create this interwoven network of rollups.
Yeah, so I think I just had an experience after being in Cosmos so long as a builder and as a user of Ethereum rollups where I was like, this can't be it. The problem was Cosmos had always been the most flexible framework to build unique blockchains. It is a really good SDK. People can build unique stuff that you can't build anywhere else, like DYDXV4, Barachain, Osmosis, Celestia. Like these are all Cosmos chains that are trying to do something cool. They're not just innovating on the smart contract layer. And that was awesome. But it's still difficult to build a Cosmos chain. You have to have a layer 1 essentially, which means you have to have a validator set, which means you have to inflate your token supply to pay out for security. And that inflation of a token supply is often the killer of a lot of Cosmos chains, because it turns out that you're inflating more than the buy pressure that exists, and that just becomes a downward cyclical loop. Then the way that Cosmos was implemented, it wasn't done in the most seamless fashion. So you had the hub, which was supposed to be this like central layer where all sorts of routes go through, and that never turned out to be the case, because everyone else started to fight to be the hub. So you had Osmosis or Axeler, and then what happened was Atom, the token, had no use case within the entire Cosmos world. And so you have this Game of Thrones situation where everyone only cares about themselves. There's no like collective whole where everyone's like, yeah, I care about Cosmos. They're only like, I care about Say or Osmosis or their own token. And if you look at the opposite side, which is rollups on Ethereum, everyone cares about the ETH token, no matter where they are. Like if you're like an SVM rollup on ETH, they're still going to use ETH for gas. Arbitrum and Optimism are all using ETH for gas. But the problem with rollups on Ethereum was that you just don't get anything interesting. You get a copy paste fork of the exact same chain over and over again. The only thing you can do is start iterating on the EVM Solidity smart contracting side. And once you launch one of these chains, you lose basically flexibility as well as you're fragmented and isolated. So how are you going to get assets to this chain? How are you going to have instant bridging? Are you going to have multiple versions of USDC? Like what about CCTP access? What about oracles? And in a modular world where we have like tens of DAs, multiple oracles, 15 interoperability solutions, that fragmentation of UX as well as the flexibility of building something interesting is going to get so messy over time. And so we thought, how can we build a system that just solves all of these problems from day one? Instead of appending a rollup framework to a legacy system like Ethereum and then building in the interoperability pieces, let's design a layer 1 plus layer 2 solution in tandem that understands we're going to have a rollup centric future with thousands of rollups. How can a lot of those architectural decisions solve the problems that we're seeing and be baked into the system? So now what we've essentially built is like a network for interwoven rollups. It holistically rebuilds how multi-chain networks should look, feel, and operate for not only developers, but also users. We understand that our user base is, the people building the chains, but also the end users using those chains. And so we had to iterate on the architecture stack, but also the product stack that people see. And so on Initia now, you can essentially build a rollup that is a full Cosmos SDK chain. So change whatever you want on the rollup itself on the chain side. Use EVM, MoveVM, or WASM VM. So whatever smart contract language works best for you in your application. And then through the layer 1, you have fungibility across every single one of these rollups. So the same ETH token on one rollup is the same on another. You can send them fine between them. You're not going to have like Axeler USDC and Layer 0 USDC and SYN USDC. You have full access to CCTP. You have oracles that are enshrined into the chain and accessible from every one of these layer 2s. And then you have like a suite of product UX that we've built on top to make it as simple as possible for end users to move between a bunch of different rollups. I was just always a believer that the app chain thesis is how we're going to scale. Like I think there's 2 ways to scale. One is you make a very performant layer, and that's like Monad Mega ETH route. And the other is you have thousands and thousands of rollups. The Monad Mega ETH route would be the optimal way. Shared state is awesome. But I think if we get to the level of growth we want to be at in crypto and everyone's using this thing, we're still going to need hundreds of monads. So let's just start from having thousands of rollups and making sure that they can communicate fine.
Gotcha. Yeah, totally makes sense. Solving fragmentation on a bunch of different levels, developer experience, user experience. I've always been a big fan of the app chain thesis as well. I feel like it's been lost in recent months, maybe like the past year or so, but I'm still a huge fan of it from like a fundamental level. Hirsch, what about you? What was your kind of like moment for why you were interested in coming to help build this thing? Or is Zon just like that charming?
Zon has Riz, I believe, so he riz his way, right, to persuade me to join Initia. And plus, the entire thing was revealed to me in a dream. So it was just like I foresaw this, so I was like, yeah, might as well join it. That's pretty much it.
The best decisions, honestly. The just straight up gut,
Yeah, just got just
given
got gut.
message.
Yeah, just got it. No, it's just a gut feeling because Zon's Canadian and he like shares similar interests like as me. So I was like, yeah, he's a cool dude. Might as well join him. And plus, there's a big vouch from Zahir, and Zahir said Zon's cool. I'm like, yo, dope. That's it. That's all I needed.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
So
Yeah,
why
no,
are
that's awesome.
you interested in the app chain thesis? I think
Why am
what
I
makes it
interested in the app chain
interesting for
thesis?
you? Yeah.
I think that something that a lot of like one of my first, I don't want to call it like a light bulb moment, but I think it's something that a lot of people in the space don't realize or just don't see. And that's that like blockchains are products for developers, like not for people. And we have all these like layer ones and layer twos, like marketing towards end users like me or like Cito. And I never really understood that approach. Like I always felt like that line was like too blurred on these general purpose L1s and L2s. Like everything is kind of made for anyone, I'm gonna go and farm ZK sync and swap and transact and use Paymaster and all this shit. But like in reality, like in the real world where people have to do like actual like productive things, that doesn't make any sense. And it's clear now. It's always been clear it was going to happen after the incentive stopped or after the incentive stopped being interesting. That's only going to continue with insert whatever token dropping layer one or layer two here. Whereas if you have something that is more like developer focused to the point where like you can still have your base layer that is meant for community building and creating a culture and a vibe and just the general like magnetism to bring in both developers and users, but then the focus is on the developers building the applications to bring like the actual use cases. That makes a lot more sense to me. I think DYDX v4 was probably the like thing that really sold it, like how important sovereignty is for an application or for a use case. And because they were like, I mean, obviously they get flack for a bunch of different things, but like at the end of the day, they were kind of like the first ones to hop on the L2 thesis. And when they shifted away from that to this like sovereign app chain, I thought they were early to that as well. I remember seeing like Antonio kind of lay out his thought process there, and that really clicked for me. That was actually probably a big part of it, like seeing what they did and why. I would just like to see more of that. Like not a lot of super promising app chains come to mind when I think of it. I mean, there's some like OpStack L2s that make sense. I can't really think of many like many Cosmos chains that are, that are made for people like me necessarily. But I mean, it makes sense from a flexibility, sovereignty, scalability point of view. I think it makes a lot more sense than the general purpose L1, L2.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's what's cool about what DYDX did is because they moved to Cosmos Land, they're just able to change like the way that their chain actually operates. And so that helped them a lot when it comes to like price feeds. So their validators post fresh prices to the chain every single block rather than being like a pull-based approach that typically happens if you use something like Pyth, as well as like having their own MEV that they can capture, which is pretty interesting. And so rollups on Initia are can basically have the full advantage of that. You could fork DYDX and run it as a rollup, and now you just wouldn't have to deal with that validator set, but you'd still have basically the exact same thing, which is pretty awesome. And I think the way that we've been going about building an ecosystem has been really good. I think the idea that, you know, having like 100 projects for day one is like silly. Like, of course, you're not going to have 100 projects on a new chain. There's hardly 100 projects in crypto right now. And rather, our whole goal is focusing on a handful of really strong teams that are building interesting, novel, new projects that you can't do elsewhere, and ensuring that they have everything they need to succeed as an app chain. So, for example, one of the ones that I'm pretty excited about is Blackwing. That's the logo I'm wearing right now. They're basically building a chain that lets you perform leverage on any asset from any chain without liquidation risk and without oracle risk. And that's kind of like the end game of trading, in my opinion. Like, if there is a Uni v3 DEX and there's liquidity for an asset anywhere, you can perform leverage on that. And that's like the perfect item for meme coin cycle, which we're in right now. Like, any token that makes it out of Pump Fund and onto Radium, you can now perform leverage on, whether that be a token on Solana or something on Blast or something on the Initia's ecosystem or somewhere in Osmosis. Like, you can long and short it. And that's pretty awesome. And they're focusing on like using the architecture that they have to build a end users facing product and only focusing on that. So I think that falls in line with the thesis you had, Ali. Another one I'm pretty excited about is Contro. They're basically building this thing called a GLOB, stands for a gradual limit order book. It's like this new type of order book that they've built that slows down the time of markets. And what this lets you do is like build the most interesting prediction markets possible. So right now, one of the problems with prediction markets is if someone finds out something or some insider information, they can just instantly snipe the market. And because it's based on liquidity pools, like no one else gets that upside. It can be totally front run by like a few seconds or milliseconds. And so with a glob, basically the markets are slowed down. So even if you went to snipe it, the prices wouldn't fully change immediately like an XYK pool. It would slowly shift over time. So you don't have to be the fastest, but you have to have still the right idea on your prediction. And I think that's going to be a killer application in the long term.
Damn. Yeah, that's dope. I've never heard anything like that before. Helps to like, you know, lower the technical barrier to entry. I'm always like a fan of that for different use cases. And I didn't know that was what Blackwing was building, but I've been looking forward to that like class of products for a while. It's good to hear that like it's being built somewhere where liquidity fragmentation is also being addressed. Applications aside, I'm curious to like, it seems like thus far you guys have done a really good job of building a community. I think part of that can also be attributed or is like tangentially related to the fact that I think Zan, it was you yesterday who tweeted about your entire team being in-house, everything kind of being homegrown and aligned on that same level. Can you guys like speak a little bit to how you've thought about building an authentic community from, especially considering like, you know, like I said, going back to the whole thing of chains not necessarily being products for users, but still being able to, you know, have a healthy balance of attracting developers looking to build interesting things and users looking to spread your message and be part of your little cult.
Hirsch, you want to share some ideas on how you've thought about community building for the user side?
For community building for Initia, what we've done is just basically listen to the community feedback every single time, and what we have done is like create like a very tight knit community on Twitter, on Discord, and even on Telegram. And what we do is we always take feedback from our users because we value them really highly, and they're actually the ones that know best, right? to where to like steer how our community is going. So that's what we have done. We have created like incentives for them and whatnot, and we've created like engaging like uh quest for them to try out and use our like our user chain. Giving testnet like upgrading Jenny, it reminds me personally of Tamagotchis, and I was a big fan of Tamagotchis when I was growing up, and I feel like a lot of people can connect with that because if you're born in the early 2000s or even late 90s, like I'm pretty sure you've used a Tamagotchi, and that's basically what we have done is create something engaging, right? And sort of rewarding as well for the users to try out and get a feel for. And another thing we've done is just like try to balance technical stuff, like a technical post on Twitter, and just do a bit of shit posting on the side to tell everybody, oh, we're just not like fully serious like all the time. Like we can joke around and whatnot. And I feel like that has helped us a lot, right, in terms of creating a very cool and niche community.
Yeah, I think the anime posting has been incredible. But aside from that, I think it's just about where you spend your time. I think that, community is such a big part of crypto and crypto projects, and it's what's going to lead to users using a lot of different things. Like the best way to grow in crypto is if someone in real life tells their friend, like, hey, I'm using this platform, Initia, or I'm using this app on Initia, like, go try it out. And that's going to have a much higher conversion rate if someone sees like an ad on Instagram. And so you want to be able to build that loyal fan base. And I think there's a few things that go into that. The first is, spending your time. So understanding that community is like a major part of what your task is as a team, and knowing that like if you're spending, say, 20% of your time with developers or 30% of your time on marketing, like a decent chunk of that should also be spent with the community, like in Telegram, in Discord, like actually talking to people. The second is making sure that you're not farming the users. Like I think Galaxy and Zeely and those types of quests, they have their use cases, but I think it's more for educational stuff. I think if you're using that for like following you on Twitter or like going and engaging with this website, I think those are net negative because you end up just getting followed by a lot of bots. And so try and grow an organic community. If it's tiny, that's okay because those are going to be real people and you can grow over time. And I think we've done a really good job on not using those systems.
Yeah, and part of that relationship that Ali was mentioning between like chains being used for or chains being marketed to consumers versus how do you convince developers to build with you guys on as a Initia?
So on the developer side, it's actually been pretty easy because I think there's just a product market fit. I think there's just a gap in what exists in the market right now and what people need. So if you are a Move developer or a Cosmosm developer, first of all, there's basically nowhere that you can build your own sovereign app chain. And if you built with Aptos and Sui, they're amazing teams, but they haven't done the best at cultivating like a DeFi ecosystem or something that's really niche to Web3. And that means they spent a lot of their time onboarding teams like Pancake and Sushi rather than caring about their own native projects that have like the opportunities to still do very well. And because of that, a lot of teams wanted to become sovereign. They wanted to own themselves. They wanted to expand their TAMs. They wanted to onboard from other chains. And Initia was a prime venue for them to do that. It's the only place right now where you can build a Move-based app chain. The second was people in Cosmos, essentially a lot of them want to build chains, but don't have the means to do so because it's difficult to run a Cosmos layer 1, like I mentioned. And there's also just so much infrastructure you have to deal with afterwards. IBC relays, RPCs, like all of that sort of stuff that you don't really care about when you want to build an app chain. You just want to build your app. And so we remove all of those complexities. You can now launch like a full-fledged Cosmos chain in Cosmosm in a few hours, and all the rest is solved for you. And then on the EVM side, it's also been pretty easy because when you launch a rollup on Ethereum, you still have to deal with so much. It's not all solved for you. And typical RAS providers, they are going to charge you a decent amount of money because that's how they make money, right? They make money by charging you to run your infrastructure. And that means if you want layer 0 support or you want this Oracle or that one, they're going to upcharge you. And on Initia, like all of those features are baked into the system. So we don't have to do anything. Like instant bridging already exists naturally. Oracles exist naturally. CCTP access exists. DA to Celestia exists. Like all that's just baked into the system we've built, rather than being like upsell package options. And so I think we've
where have the most
yeah.
I where have most of the customizations happened? When you have all of these like very solid things out of the box, like what have been the major changes between the Minutia
So the first
Minutia's?
is the VM choice. So between EVM, MoveVM, and WASM VM. And then outside of the smart contracting layer and what they build there, the next thing is on the Cosmos SDK side. So one of the things that Cosmos SDK makes it really easy to do is have this concept of mempool lanes. And what that lets you do is like change the way that your transactions are ordered. So you can take your mempool, which is like where transactions come in and then they get processed, and split it up into multiple chunks and say, okay, if this transaction is a deposit one into our app, maybe it's going to go in the free lane and people won't have to pay for gas. If this one, if you're a trading application, you can create like a MEV lane that might allow you to have in-app MEV auctions on every block if you're like a perpetuals platform. If you want to have like a priority lane for Oracle updates, like those types of stuff can happen. So mostly on the Cosmos SDK side.
That's not something that, let's say, like an OP stack chain is able to do, or is it?
No, it is not.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm high level on the tech side, but I think that's like been the major differentiator when telling people that you guys were coming on of like, it's like RAS, but you can do like a lot more
It's
with the
like
tech. Like there's a lot more
there's a lot more
customization.
flexibility. A lot of the choice overload is removed. Like, a lot of people give you the decision between this DA and that DA. They're both the same. They're all going to work at reducing the cost of your blobs. And rather than deal with all of these, I think what's important for our system is like choosing one and integrating it well. And so that all the data is in one place, because maybe that will unlock some special characteristics in the future. So we just use Celestia for DA. We just use IBC for interoperability and bridging. And that helps remove a lot of the potential fragmentation that can exist once we have 1,000 rollups. And then I think one of the most interesting things is like this economic framework that we've built on top. But Ali, you're about to say something.
No, yeah, go ahead. I'm interested to hear about that as well.
Yeah, so we've built this thing called Initia VIP. I can't reveal everything about it, but I'll tell you some of the major characteristics. And the idea for this basically came from a few different things. The first was understanding what I was saying earlier, where in Cosmos land, there's not like a single token that everyone has to fight for. And Atom never really became money within the ecosystem. And so how can we push the init token across all of the layer 2s on Initia and ensure that there are new use cases for it? We're in the business of building block space here. So for example, enforcing people to use init for gas doesn't really make sense. These layer 2s should be able to use whatever they want for gas. And, just gas fees is not going to be enough. Even if you have like burn mechanics, unless you have like insane volume or crazy features like burning Luna for UST, the amount that you burn is probably not going to be significant enough. So you have to create some other mechanisms. And that's where we developed Initia VIP, which is essentially a programmatic grant system / retention mechanism that builds use cases for the init token, as well as gives layer 2 teams the ability to onboard more users and essentially just have additional funding for rewards for users. And what that kind of does is, it gives layer 2 teams additional tokens to onboard users. It acts as a grant system that is not subjective. So it's all programmatic and on chain. So one of the things that happened with Arbitrum STIP and like the OP program was a lot of teams just didn't get it. And a lot of the ones that did just kept those tokens within their treasury instead of giving them back to users. But I think the way that these programs should work is you should incentivize users to use applications. And by using applications, the teams make some fees. And so that's essentially what we've built across a huge multi-chain spectrum, where that will hopefully create new use cases for the init token and help drive value.
And going back to like what we were talking about earlier with kind of the meta right now with regards to like airdrop and high FTV launches, you mentioned that that's something you kind of is on his way. It's on its way out, or it should be on its way out. Have you guys at all thought about like, where init might stand with regards to that, or how you're thinking about it at least?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line that you have to play. I think with the airdrop, it's very difficult to get right, and it's so easy to get wrong, and it can totally nuke your project, right? Which is crazy. You build a product for 2 years and then you fuck up
No
the
pressure.
launch and it's just over. And I think there's a difference between satisfying a lot of people with a little bit and satisfying like a core group with a much bigger allocation. And I think that's the way that you want to go, at least. But we're still fiddling around with how we want to do things and iterating on some ideas. I think there needs to be a lot more explored in terms of like having community bought in. If you're giving everyone free tokens, that's not really going to do much for buying people in. I think you want people to actually commit something as well. And so I'm thinking about how we can incorporate that idea. But hopefully we have a larger float from day one. It should be within the multiple percents. And I think it's very important for us to start at a very reasonable valuation. I think if you look at ecosystems that succeeded, they've gone up over time. That's obviously not something you can promise. Who knows what's going to happen? Sometimes things go up, sometimes they go down. But put your best foot forward to have these wealth opportunities exist. And that exists both within the initial token launch, but also the ecosystem and the layer 2s that launch, making sure that they are new novel projects that have new token launches rather than onboarding existing tokens that exist elsewhere.
Yeah, good stuff. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's good to hear that teams are starting to kind of shift back towards more sustainable ideas. Generally like higher user satisfaction. I think while the meta has been one way for a while, we've also seen like good at least like enough like good experiments or like new approaches. There was like the tapioca options airdrop thing. There was the Frentech like 100% to community, which we talked about. Obviously, like that one didn't work out, but maybe don't charge 20% fees and see what happens next time. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff is great to hear. Like, seeing this new stuff tried, feeling this sort of like fatigue in what hasn't been working, and then that's ideally should be enough to swing the pendulum back in terms of the actual meta. I want to go back to something that I saw on Twitter and something that Hirsch mentioned earlier as well, the like Tamagotchi type game. I keep seeing these tweets about like canned food and like evolutions and like I don't know what's like going on there. Like, what is that? How does that relate to Initia?
Yeah, essentially, for public testnet, we've spent a long time building out our ecosystem, even in advance of mainnet launch, and that's because when we launched public testnet, we wanted there to already be a suite of things to do, and applications to play with, and layer 2s to try out. And so we launched public testnet about 5 weeks ago with our layer 1 and 8 layer 2s. 6 of those being like proper projects, 2 of those being just like play networks that exist for testing. And we built a pretty fun on-chain just game with it to get people excited and engaged and to actually try these things out. And so what you do is you come into Initia, you create a wallet, and then you have to do 6 tasks on the layer 1 to collect basically Exodia cards. And you put them together and you summon your on-chain pet, which is named Jenny. And then you basically have Tamagotchi every single week. And so by playing with the layer 2 applications, as well as some things on the layer 1, you're going to earn some points. Those get airdropped to you once a day, so you don't know actually what gives you the points. And then there are multiple different lottery machines for using those points to buy food. There's different qualities of food, canned food, good lunch, filet mignon. And then you basically can feed your on-chain pet once a week to upgrade and evolve her. And the goal is to hopefully evolve her to the max level after 8 weeks. And it's been a great way at pushing users that come to play with Initia to try out the layer 2 projects that are there, because that's where you earn the most XP. And the whole point of our job as an infrastructure provider is help layer 2 apps win. And we're trying to even start doing that on testnet by pushing all of our users to those apps to start playing with them, to start growing their communities. And it's been pretty awesome. So we've had, I think, nearly 2.7 million wallets come try out testnet. And for a wallet to actually exist here, they have to do some like crazy Gitcoin passport verification. So I'd like to think that a lot of it is not bots. And there's been something like 75 million transactions across all of the 8 networks, which is pretty kick-ass. And people have built 1.3 million Jennies. They've summoned them. And then over 1 million Jennies have been fed and evolved. And it like follows kind of like an Avatar theme, because I saw the Avatar TV show, the live action one recently, and then we designed our dog to basically evolve as an avatar over time and learn the different powers.
No, you're supposed to mention the Nickelodeon show. That was the best one.
I was gonna say the live action one was trash, dude. I
Dude,
couldn't
okay.
finish it.
The Nickelodeon one was great, but the live action one came out recently, so I was reminded.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm an animation maxi. That was one of my favorite shows growing up. So it hurt to see
They ruined it.
Whatever that mess was.
What about the One Piece live action? Did you watch that?
That was good.
I haven't seen One Piece. I don't know. How do people watch One Piece? Well, I don't know about the live action, but like the actual anime, isn't it like 10,000 episodes?
I think it's 1,000 over many years.
That's still insane. That's like, I don't know. Everyone I know who's seen all of those is like not well, so it's never really it's never really been appealing to me. Yeah, cool stuff.
Those are some pretty crazy. Yeah, those are some pretty crazy numbers. I think that's really impressive. What's also impressive is kind of how you talked about just like general token conversation and just how you guys are thinking about your placement being that infrastructure provider earlier. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that a lot of people on the show dance around that in like a not so great way, and it seems like they have no idea what's going to happen. So I think that's really cool. One thing I wanted to ask about the Jenny dog, is that somebody's dog? Is that your dog? Whose dog is that?
Yeah, it's Stanford's dog. It's a real dog. It's in the office at all times. I think at the office we have maybe like 6 dogs that come in almost every day, so it's quite a time.
That's bullish.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Dog park in the office.
Dog park in the office. We're gonna have to get a full-time dog carer just for the office.
That's a bullish hire. That's a bullish hire for sure. No HR, but you got to get the.
We love our dogs.
That kind of I'm not gonna lie, that kind of bothered me, Zon. I saw that tweet about everybody in house. It's like we also have HR, but like for what? Like really?
Yeah, I'm not trying to have any Neil Salami situations going on here.
Okay. Okay, that's fair.
Oh man.
That
I
one.
think HR
that-
is important.
That's yeah, hard to argue with that one. We're coming up on time here. Zahn, you've already mentioned a couple of minitias or a couple of L2s that are going to be deploying with you guys that you're excited for. I'm curious to hear if there's any others you guys can share, or Hirsch, if you have any favorites, any ones in specific that interest you.
Uh, I like all our minitias, and just to reiterate like what Zahn said, it's like best to have like everyone win together. And I think Zahn mentioned it like when I first joined the team, like he's telling me like that it's because he said team, right, as like he put this acronym for team is like together everyone achieves more, and that's basically what our goal is, like to build Initia and all of our minitias together to become like the Initia militia, right?
That was corny
And
as hell, Zahn. Did he really say that?
I didn't say that.
I might be making stuff up, but let me cook, right? So I like Tucana, Blackwing, Glob, Contra, which is thing, and instead of I don't call it Contra, I just like the word Glob because it's funny, so I just call him Glob. And I like Lunch as well. Like they're all really good minitias, and I can't reveal any minitias, but I think Zahn can give you guys a hint.
I can give a hint.
What's your
I can tell you about
target
some
number for launch day for minitias? Do you guys have one
for
in mind?
launch day, I think the amount that we have right now even is like more than sufficient, which is around, I think there's 6 live on public testnet. I think we've announced a total of 9. I would love if all 9 were ready for the first week of mainnet. And like a lot of our job now is shifting from building stuff ourselves, since we finished a lot of it, to like, how can we just support these layer 2 teams? Whether that be like, do you need marketing help? Do you need engineering help? Like, do you need us to help with the infrastructure? Having all of those ready to go on day 1 would be huge, because I think some of the things that I saw during the last cycle was, new chain launches, everyone bridges in, collect an airdrop. There's nothing to do. They sell their airdrop, they bridge out. I want to make sure that there's like ways for retention to push people into trying out things, and maybe they'll find something interesting that they like, and then they'll stick around. So hopefully we have all 9 of those ready for day 1, and then more can come over time. I think one of the hard things is, if our goal is to help layer 2 teams win, a lot of that means like time that we have to spend. And so having too many is like is net negative for us at the moment. So working with like a handful of teams that we think are awesome, helping them, and then over time we'll get better at being able to help more and more at scale. So some of the other ones that I'm pretty excited about are Civicia. They're just like an on-chain Monopoly game, kind of. But what's interesting is that it's like global scale and never stops. And so people can like spin a dice, go around the board, collect different land items, and they can team up with other people that own the same land to like sabotage other cities and countries, or to like reinforce theirs. So there's a whole like social element on top of this on-chain game, which is pretty fun. There's another one that's called Czar. They're built by some of the ex-Redacted cartel fellas. They're pretty awesome. They're building the Fun Network, and that's basically going to be like a place for NFTs within the modular ecosystem, as well as some on-chain gambling and degeneracy. And I think that's going to be an interesting combination, since there's not really a home ground for that within modular world. And then
Shout
one
out to
other,
Omnia.
Omnia is pretty based, is Milky Way. They are building a restaking hub for the modular ecosystem. So building a chain out to restake things like their Milk Tia, which is restaked to Celestia, as well as Milk Init, and using those to essentially create AVSs for other layer 2s, sovereign rollups, things like IBC relayers. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. A lot to look into there. We're a little
Wait.
bit over here. Don't want to. What? Yeah, go
Time
ahead.
out. Earlier you said everything you guys were doing, you guys finished your stuff. So do you want to announce a date for mainnet, or is that a bit too premature?
It's coming soon, very soon.
Very
Hopefully, yeah, very soon. We're gonna have some special announcements at ETH.cc where we'll announce some big things like that.
Love
Nice.
it. Announcement of the announcement.
Someone write that down.
Yep,
Yeah,
double
it's-
announcement.
Pre-announcement.
Pre-announcement.
Announcement that there will be an announcement of an announcement. Yep.
We'll be waiting. It's on my calendar. Cool guys. I don't want to, take up too much of anybody's time. Last thing, like if you guys have any like closing remarks, calls to action for our users, should we all go and make Jenny's? Like what's the best plan of action here for us?
Yep. Go summon your on-chain Jenny at app.testnet.initia.xyz or just go to initia.xyz and you'll get linked. But go summon your Jenny, play around, hit me up with feedback. We're always here to iterate.
Cool.
And make
Good stuff.
sure you feed her the best food. Other she'll get angry.
The timeline is pretty. I was gonna ask this earlier. The timeline is pretty bearish. Everyone is sad. I feel like both of you guys have been through the ringer of these kind of cycles and stuff. Do you have any inspirational words for the people?
Inspirational words. To quote the great Newsy Johnson, always take a chance. Always take a chance.
Nice.
Well said. Well said.
We'll leave it at that.
All right, guys. That was episode 78 with Initia. Thanks again, Zani Hirsch. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll catch everybody else next week.